When I say the 2015 NHL draft, odds are one of two thoughts come to mind. Either the McDavid draft, or which one is that? In which case the answer is the McDavid draft. It is also the draft of the Bruins had 3 picks in a row. We don't have to talk about it. But obviously this particular draft stands out for more than one reason beyond just Connor McDavid and the Bruins. I said we don't have to talk about it. While it's been less than 5 years at the time of recording since this draft, the talent pool that's entered the NHL has already made it one to remember. 22 forwards, 7 defensemen, and 1 goaltender were selected in the first round. And today, by popular request from my lovely patrons over on Patreon, we take a look back at this draft, but not just at how it played out, but how I would redraft the field with what we know now. Now, to keep it fair, if a team drafted a forward, I'll still be having them select a forward, as if it, wasn't tedious to begin with the debate whether or not a team should have drafted for need or selected the best player available. At that point in time, it's even more tedious and arguably pointless now. So let's get down to it. Let's take a look at who I view as the top 22 forwards, the top 7 defensemen, and the top goaltender thus far from the 2015 draft. And again, as expected, as always with a video like this, it's just for fun. You don't need to take it overly seriously, and odds are you're gonna disagree with me at least once, probably a lot. And no, I didn't look up every single metric or advanced stat to meticulously decode who the undisputed best players are. You might disagree with, what I looked at in terms of stats and possession metrics and all that. And you know what, it's cool because if you disagree with me, it's fine. You can let me know how dumb I am in the comments. I'm sure you already have. And I still love you, I promise, but no dessert after dinner for a weak young man. That said, here we go. Let's get it started. With the number 1 overall pick in the 2015 draft, the Edmonton Oilers selected Connor McDavid. And yeah, they're still selecting Connor McDavid. Surprise! Obviously not. Now, I don't need to spend much time on this choice here. Connor McDavid's the best player in the NHL today. No disrespect to greats like Brad Marchand, or even someone slightly lower on the totem pole like Sidney Crosby. Connor's the guy. You don't need me telling you that. Even if you do, all you have to do is go watch a quick highlight video, because I can't do his skill set justice with just words. The speed, the hands, the production, everything. The Oilers lucked out in this lottery. Maybe they more than lucked out, depending on who you asked and whether or not it was staged. But the bottom line is, the easy choice was the right one. He's been carrying that team since he arrived, and at the time of recording is on the verge, alongside Leon Draisaitl, of carrying the Oilers to a second postseason appearance in his tenure with the team. With the 2nd overall pick, the Buffalo Sabres selected Jack Eichel, and they will still be selecting Jack Eichel. Now, honestly, I very well could have placed Mitch Marner here to ruffle some feathers. Marner has slightly better production, possession metrics, etc. But obviously that kind of comes down to the differences in talent levels that each player have been playing with. Although that's not to say that Eichel's been playing with complete scrubs. But ultimately, Eichel goes down already as, one of the top silver medals in NHL draft history. For a 2nd overall pick, pretty damn good. He's the complete package, and had McDavid not been in the draft, of course, Eichel was a lock to go number 1, and rightfully so. Now, for his own sake, we can only hope the Sabres find a way to turn it around, as they've yet to even sniff the playoffs while Eichel has been there. With the 3rd overall pick, the Arizona Coyotes selected Dylan Strohm, but not today. Instead, they select Mitch Marner. As mentioned, a debate could have been had that Marner should have been the 2nd overall pick in this draft. And in a way, I'd have a hard time disagreeing. Again, the production's there over Eichel, the possession metrics, but regardless, Marner's a lock to be a top 3 pick in this draft. And while Strohm has found his stride since being traded away from the Coyotes, it simply wasn't a fit between player and organization. Obviously, it's impossible to say with a concept like this what any team would look like once you make this drastic of a change. Would a player still develop on a different team? In the Yotes case, you look at their current roster now. Would they have ended up with Taylor Hall and Phil Kessel as they currently have them now? Probably not, but regardless, Marner to this point has proven to be a top 3 forward from this draft, and in this scenario, he's off to the desert, where he's perhaps to play with Austin Matthews some point down the road. With the 4th overall pick, the Toronto Maple Leafs selected Mitch Marner. Now, obviously, he's off the board, so instead, they go with a Finn, Sebastian Aho. What a disappointment to have to settle for Sebastian Aho. Now, Aho's production might be a little bit behind some of the other names coming up on this list, but it's his possession stats, the defensive play, that see him jump from being the 35th overall pick in the real draft to being in the top 4 here. All the more impressive considering he was fairly lowly rated, 110 by Future Considerations, 127 by Hockey Prospect, and was the 18th rated EU skater heading into the draft. In just 5 years, he's already carved out a solid career. He's been crucial in seeing the Hurricanes bounce back to contender status. Of course, they made the Eastern Conference Final last year where they were swept by the Bruins. Yes, I'm going to speak positively about the Bruins while I still can, and while talking about the Maple Leafs. Sorry. Anyway, Aho to the Leafs. Not a bad substitute for losing Mitch Marner. With the 5th pick, we have our first defenseman selected. The Carolina Hurricanes initially drafted Noah Hannifin. This time out, though, they're going with Thomas Chabot. Hot Sam Bacho to the Canes. Now, Chabot truly emerged once Erik Karlsson departed from the Sens. But he's more than just a power play specialist like some people like to label him. He does have the highest point per game total of any defenseman in this class, but the physical play is there. The man blocks shots. He is, for my money, the top defenseman in this class. And obviously the ripples of what this selection would bring would be massive. You know, you look at the Canes, now not having a need to trade for Dougie Hamilton, as they'd already have their top defenseman on roster, or on their roster. So it would be interesting. It would change a lot. But again, for my money, Thomas Chabot, the top defenseman through the first 5 years since this draft of this class. With the 6th pick, the New Jersey Devils selected Pavel Zacha. Now, no disrespect to him, but come on. With this pick, the Devils instead draft Matthew Barzal. Now, needless to say, this would drastically change the outlook of the Devils. Whether or not they end up with Nico Hischier, Jack Hughes in the aftermath, who's to say? But hey, at the very least, this proves that the Bruins weren't the only ones to goof up by not drafting Barzal, right? Yeah, we can hate on New Jersey now too, like we hate on the Bruins. I am dreading talking about the Bruins. But yeah, not too much to say here. Matt Barzal, phenomenal player, obviously. Pavel Zacha, still potentially worth the first round pick. We might talk about him later. But yeah, big time improvement for the Devils getting Barzal instead. The next 2 picks, we have the Philadelphia Flyers at 7 drafting Ivan Provorov, and the Columbus Blue Jackets at 8 taking Zach Werenski. And I'm gonna flip them here. These two are honestly interchangeable. Werenski brings the point production. Provorov is much more physical, blocks shots more frequently as well. I guess typically, a bit more defensive of the two. Personally, I'd aim for the swap if I was in control of the Flyers, though, but you can't really go wrong with either player. So again, it's going to be Zach Werenski to Philadelphia and Ivan Provorov to Columbus. With the 9th pick, the San Jose Sharks initially drafted Timo Meier, but today, they take Mikko Rantanen. Now, the criticism of Mikko is that he's a product of Nathan MacKinnon in Colorado, but I completely disagree. He was a projected top 10 pick, the number 1 rated EU skater, and he's proven why since he has been drafted. He's the real deal. Injury concerns this season aside, it's no disrespect to Timo Meier, but Rantanen could be viewed as just, Meier, but better in kind of the way that they play. With the 10th overall pick, the Colorado Avalanche selected Mikko Rantanen. He's off the board, so instead, they go with Brock Besser. Now, we talked about injury concerns with Mikko. Obviously, those concerns are amplified with Besser, but when Brock is healthy, he's worthy of being a top 10 pick in this draft, no doubt, in my mind, just in terms of the production, the ability, the skill. And obviously right now you look at the Canucks, if Brock Besser were healthy, it would be an even better situation for the Canucks as they push towards the playoffs. With the 11th pick in the draft, the Florida Panthers selected Lawson Krause. Not this time, though. Instead, they go with Kyle Connor. Now, no disrespect to Krause. He's been a full-time NHLer with the Coyotes for the past 2 seasons, but he is not Kyle Connor. Now, Kyle isn't exactly underrated. People know he's good, but at the time of recording this, he's a point per game with the Jets this season. Now, maybe it's just because the Jets have taken a step back this year due to the loss of Byfuglien, Trouba, Myers, etc., but they don't get talked about as often despite being in the playoff mix, and as a result, Kyle Connor doesn't get the respect he deserves. really, he's the real deal. And I'm going to say that about a lot of players. I already have. He would have suited the Panthers much, much better than, Lawson Krause did, who was moved alongside Dave Bolland to the Arizona Coyotes, as I mentioned. So, Kyle Connor to the Panthers. Yeah, him next to the likes, and who knows how it would have played out. But if the current roster stay the same, imagine Kyle Connor in the top 6 for the Panthers right now. Maybe that changes how they go out and acquire players. Maybe they don't get Michael Hoffman, but Michael Hoffman? I mean, that's his name. Maybe they don't go out and get Mike Hoffman. Maybe they get another defenseman. Who knows what they look like. Kyle Connor to the Cats. With the 12th pick, the Dallas Stars selected Denis Gurianov, but instead, they're selecting Jake DeBrusk. Now, Guryanov's one of the names that I have in the honorable mentions category for this draft, alongside other forwards like Adam Gaudette, Matthew Joseph, Jordan Greenway, Joel Eriksson Ek, and others. He's a solid player, but thus far he's not at the same level as Jake DeBrusk, who is a complete player. He has the production and the stats to back him up, and as a result, he goes 2 picks higher than what he did in real life. I'm not retaking that. DeBrusk to Dallas. And here we go. The reason why people wanted me to cover this draft, and look, I love Don Sweeney. I think he's been a phenomenal GM since taking over for Peter Chiarelli. I think he's worthy of the award he won as the league's top general manager, but nobody's perfect, Donnie Dollars included. And this, of course, to date, has been the most glaring mark on his record. He went for it, and he failed. Now, Jake DeBrusk is a legitimate top 6 NHLer, as we've mentioned. He was selected with the 14th pick. Then we get, though, to picks 13 and 15. With the 13th pick, they took Jakub Zaboral. Of course, 14th pick, Jake DeBrusk. And with the 15th pick, Zach Senyshyn. Now, let's just put it kindly. Zaboral and Senyshyn have failed to establish themselves at the NHL level, and while they still may, they're extremely unlikely to ever hit the potential that's expected of a mid-first round pick. And of course, when Barzal, Connor, and Thomas Chabot were the next 3 picks directly after this, it's a mountain of salt poured onto the wound. That said, in this perfect world, Don doesn't miss. The Bruins take Vince Dunn, 13th overall, who, for me, is the 4th best defenseman in this draft at this point, mainly due to his point production. With the 14th pick, with DeBrusk off the board, they take Dylan Strohm, who, yes, has fallen drastically from his original 3rd overall spot, but for him it could have been a lot worse had he not been traded to the Blackhawks. It's been a career revitalization. Again, whether or not he would have developed with the Bruins, who's to say. And rather than taking Senyshyn with the 15th pick, Travis Konechny trades in the black and orange for the black and gold, which, with his defensive ability, what a fit he would be alongside Bergeron and Krejci. So again, rather than Zaboral, DeBrusk, and Senyshyn to the Bruins, it is Vince Dunn, Dylan Strohm, and Travis Konechny. One hell of a haul. With the 16th pick, the New York Islanders originally selected Matthew Barzal. This time out, they take Timo Meier. Now, again, Timo is still a very solid player. No disrespect intended by having him fall out of the top 10. But, I'm not a fan of the eye test, as everyone sees something different. Some numbers are numbers. When we compare these players, the Islanders still get a great player, but he's not Matthew Barzal. So, Timo Meier, 16th to the Islanders. With the 17th pick, the Jets selected Kyle Connor. In this instance, they take Anthony Cirelli. Now, this seems like a big step down with Connor already off the board, but Cirelli might honestly benefit even more from a higher profile spot on the Jets, as opposed to being, I don't want to say lost in the shuffle on Tampa, but he certainly doesn't have to be the guy right now. But Cirelli is a tremendous player. That's the best way to sum it up. So the Jets still get a really good pick. And like I said, this is a pretty damn good draft, at least for the players that we're talking about today in the first round. So Cirelli to the Jets. With the 18th pick in the draft, the Ottawa Senators initially drafted Thomas Chabot. Today, though, they select Noah Hannifin. Now, perhaps it's controversial to have Hannifin as the 5th best defenseman in the draft. It's still a really good pickup for Ottawa, although whether or not he would have been able to carry the weight like Chabot has in the aftermath of the Karlsson era is obviously completely unknown. The difference here mainly being, you know, the offensive nature of the other defensemen that were selected ahead of him. But Hannifin, obviously, still a really good young defenseman. With the 19th pick, the Detroit Red Wings selected Evgeny Svechnikov. This time out, they take Connor Garland. When talking about these two players, it's really best to sum it up like this. Evgeny Svechnikov has 20 career games. Connor Garland this season is having a career year, a breakout year for the Arizona Coyotes. Time will tell if Garland's able to keep that up and take that next step forward. But he has been sneaky good for a bit now, even before breaking into the lineup full time like he did last year. He played 47 games, I believe. He's just good. He's just good. Take my word for it. A couple of quick ones here. With the 20th overall pick, the Minnesota Wild initially drafted Joel Eriksson Ek. This time out, they take Arupe Hintz. And with the 21st overall pick, the Ottawa Senators initially drafted Colin White. Instead, they pick up Anthony Beauvillier. Then we get to the 22nd overall pick. The Washington Capitals selected the only goalie picked up in the first round, Ilya Samsonov. But this time, I'm going to have them take Mackenzie Blackwood. Now, it's genuinely a tough call here. You could easily stick with Samsonov, but there is a smaller sample size at the NHL level. But obviously, I know what he's done. He's Washington's starter. But if you look at Blackwood, one could argue how good he would do behind that Caps defense as well, rather than how he's done behind the New Jersey defense. So I like Blackwood's stats, admittedly. I don't know. I wanted to give him a bit of a shout out here. You'd probably stick with Samsonov. Shout out to Aiden Hill as well, and Arizona, the only other notable goalie thus far in this draft. Again, some rapid fire here. With the 23rd pick, the Vancouver Canucks selected Brock Besser. This time out, they pick up Colin White. With the 24th pick, the Philadelphia Flyers, who initially selected Travis Konechny, will have to settle for Dominic Simone. With the 25th pick, the Winnipeg Jets selected Jack Roslovic, and that is who they keep. They make the same selection. With the 26th pick, the Montreal Canadiens selected Noah Juulsen. Instead, they go for Travis Dermott. And with the 27th pick, the Anaheim Ducks, rather than selecting Jacob Larson, go with Matt Roy, who initially went to the Kings, and he's been a quietly strong defenseman, especially when it comes to physical play, his willingness to block. With the 28th pick, the New York Islanders, rather than selecting Anthony Beauvillier, go with Pavel Zacha. Pretty big fall for him, 22 spots, I believe. With the 29th pick, we see the Columbus Blue Jackets select, rather than Gabriel Carlsson, Eric Chernak. Now, perhaps it is controversial to leave someone like Brandon Carlo off of this list, and I only do that because Carlo's fairly one-dimensional. He is a top-notch defensive defenseman, but how one chooses to compare him to someone who's a bit more well-rounded can make the difference. Chernak, in this instance, has more of an offensive touch. He is stupidly physical. Like, he hits everything that moves. So for me, I had him win out. Although some honorable mentions as well to Rasmus Andersson and Marcus Nudivara. And the final pick in the draft, the Arizona Coyotes, rather than selecting Nick Merkley, go for Troy Terry. So there you have it, how I would redraft the 2015 class, at least through the first round. Some controversial takes, I'm sure, but as I said, something like this is bound to be a bit subjective to a certain point. People have their different methods on how to compare players, what analytics to look at, the eye test, etc. At the end of the day, though, it does show that there was some great talent in this class, especially at the high end. So as I mentioned before, feel free to let me know how dumb I am in the comments, what I got wrong, how badly I got it wrong, etc. And how, of course, would you have done it differently? And what snub is unforgivable? I look forward to seeing what you have to say in the comments. As always, if you enjoyed, subscribe to the channel, man. Drop a like as well. It would be greatly appreciated. Check out everything in the description as well. Link to all the socials, the Discord, the Twitch. Of course, we stream basically every single night. And of course, the link is there to my Patreon. And a shout out to all my patrons. Of course, this subject for the video was decided by my patrons over on Patreon, and thank you guys for it. Again, look forward to seeing more videos like this, more videos covering GM trade histories and stuff like that, being on the channel a little bit more frequently, at least I hope. I will see you guys next time. Until then, have a good one. Take it easy.